let's get started. I'm going to try and be sharing as much as possible. This class came from yesterday. Someone asking about sharing my my template and a little bit explaining the configuration and everything. So I'll try to do my best. But please feel free to ask questions and let's get started without further ado. Okay, orchestral template. So this is the slide that I put together, kind of like the structure of the class is going to be talk about orchestral template. The goal is for us to be able, we'll talk about this in a second, but why do we need a template? Front end versus back end of the template. Can we not have a template? Like there are some composers who don't use a template. Is this okay? We'll discuss this here. Or messy templates, like I start composing, I just start loading stuff. That's okay. Then we'll dive into so we'll cover this relatively quickly, like I guess 5-10 minutes. And then we'll dive into my template. And then I'll give you some guidance into how to create your own template or improve your template if you already have one. Okay. Hey Helios, thanks for joining. Hello, how are you? All right, cool. So let's get started. This is just for me, kind of like the slides to try and keep me to not diverge too much. But again, if you've got questions, please post them in the chat. Hey Art from Armenia, nice. I've got some Armenian friends that I made back when I was living in Glendale. Glendale is a relatively small city right next to Los Angeles. And when I moved to LA, I lived in Glendale for 4 years. All right, cool. So why do we need a template? So speed, sound, structure. Let me see, first of all, if I've got everything loaded, my template's here and working. All right, cool, and you can hear everything, right? I guess a little bit soft. Test. 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 Yeah, kind of thing. I think it's cool. And then we've got everything else, I guess. All right, cool. Yes. Sounds. Can you hear the sounds coming from Cubase? Hopefully you do. Sounds great. Fantastic. Thank you. Massive compositions. Thank you. Cool. So why do we need a template? Speed, sound, and then structure. So usually when it's like, why do you need a template? Well, because I've got everything loaded, right? And so I can put my hands on the keyboard and start composing right away, right? That's kind of like the answer of why we have a template. But on the other hand, I don't have to load it every time, kind of thing, right? And this is important. This is what I call the front end of the template. But I think what's even more important, at least to me, once you, or at least, once you have a template, once you have a series of instruments loaded, to me, this is like, anyone can have that, right? You just load the instrument, that's done. It's a little bit tricky sometimes because of CPU, and how much RAM you've got, etc. And you've got to optimize. You have to leave some things out because you cannot load everything. And there's a little bit of an art of what tracks should be in a template, what tracks you don't need to have a template. But that's kind of like the beginner's version of a template. Let's put it that way, in my opinion. What is even more important to me, I think, is the back end of the template. We'll talk about it in a second. But the template also helps you. The template should mix and master the music for you. And also, the template should give you structure, to keep everything organized and to be able to export to DAB easy, fast, mastering steps. We'll talk about this in a second, okay? But essentially, what we're talking about is like this sound, right? Just that. So this piano has, has a quite long reverb tail, just because I just finished composing a movie where just kind of everything was very slow and the piano needed that kind of treatment. Has a little bit of EQ, has a little compression, has a little of width, right? All these things I apply to the piano. It's through or in my template. And the same thing with making sure that all the orchestral sections are cohesive and then blend together like as playing in the same room, etc. So we're talking reverbs, EQs, compressions, making sure that we don't get frequency stacking, things like this when it comes to sound. And the template should take care of this. Because as we know, when it comes to orchestral music composition, in terms of like mock-up in the box, it's not just about loading a bunch of instruments and start layering things, because we're going to have problems, right? So the template should take care of these problems. We need to control the sound, right? In three ways generally: balance left, right. Also, it's going to frequency, avoid frequency stacking in certain areas, and then in terms of depth, so reverbs, etc. Because we've got a limited amount of space, and also at some point, compression and things like this are going to help. We'll talk about all these things later. So sound, one thing, and then structure. Structure means that when we are ready, when we are done composing, it's like, okay, cool, I'm done. Let's export this puppy. I hit A, boom, and I can export the master, but also orchestra, percussion, synths, pulses, bass, and other. And all these are these guys here, which have all the kind of like mastering plugins. And also the sum of these guys is the exact same sound as the master, okay? Which is here that you cannot see, right here. This the master right here. Cool. All right. So we'll talk about this as well. All right. So why do we need a template? Just wanted to clarify real quick. But why do we need a template? It's not just so we have all the sounds ready. It's also so we can mix. So the template does the mix for us, and also keeps everything organized. Messy template. Let's talk about this. Front end. We're here. Front end versus back end. Super simple. Front end, back end. Front end is what we see. Back end is what happens behind the scenes. It's where the magic happens. Is all the mixing setup, routing, etc. That's gonna make our music sound good. Also gonna keep everything organized, and we're gonna be able to export the stems quickly. All right. So front end, back end. Front end. This guy here. Front end, where we spend most of the time, right? And generally back end is what we don't take what we are not looking as we are composing, but it's what's creating the sound and the magic. You can see up here all the EQ, specific EQ for what? These horns? Yes. So this specific EQ for what's going on? Oh yeah. Horns, trumpets. There you go. No, I did not. I can do this. No? Well, anyway. Trumpets, etc., right? Cutting specific frequencies. This is the... Where's my epic horns? Well, anyway, you get the point. This is for the piano, right? Etc. So this is just EQ, but then it's a little bit of analog saturation down here. Within this case, Magneto 2. There's sometimes a little bit of compression, things like this. Cool. All right, we'll talk about this in a second. We'll explain all this. This is what was going to take most time, but that you wanted to make sure that we had that clear. So why do we need a template? So it's not just the speed, it's also the sound and the organization, front end versus back end, and then messy template. Or I think at this point, once we've discussed this, in my opinion, it's not as important what you've got loaded here as what the configuration later on. And it does not need to be super complex, but at least having a little bit of a structure. This would be the minimum that I would recommend. These guys here, the groups and the reverbs. Okay, so I'm a composer and I don't use a template. Sometimes you'll hear. That's perfectly fine, in my opinion. In fact, sometimes I just don't use my template, but I keep all the back end. I do keep all the back end, which means that all my usually groups, stems, and reverbs remain. And so as I'm loading stuff, I route the stuff to my groups, that then route them from the group to the stem, from the stem to the master. And the groups have sends to reverbs, and so as I'm loading stuff, I have kind of my orchestral backend context already pre-configured. And so I think you can be messy in the front end, because music is messy sometimes. You're just composing, right? And you need the move fast and follow the inspiration. And I think when you are composing, you do not have to care about organization. Whereas you are composing, if you are like, I need to load this track, just load and compose, right? Where is it? But is it in the right exact place? Below the violins too. It doesn't matter. It's on top. Let's go, right? So things can get, as you are composing, in my opinion, things can temporarily get disorganized or messy. That's perfectly fine. As long as when you load that viola or when you load that cello, you load it to the lowest strings or lowest string long notes or lowest string short notes, kind of thing. Whatever it is that, however you have it configured in your backend for the groups, then you're fine. So just load the track right into the right stem or to the right group and get composing. If it's disorganized in the front end or messy in the front end, that's perfectly fine. And the same concept applies if you don't have a template, but you do have the back end of the template. As you're loading tracks, it doesn't really matter the order, the color, etc., as long as it's routed to the right place, because that will ensure, one, a good sound if it's routed to, and two, when you export, you've got everything already organized. Okay, so that's that. Cool. Makes sense? Any question? I guess this is a kind of self-explanatory. Just wanted to do kind of like a 10 minutes intro on this. All right. So let's real quick. Just give me just 1 sec. This guy here, just in case I need to draw. And do we all have clarity in kind of like the basic organization of the template? Tracks go to groups, groups go to stems, stems goes to master, and the reverbs are send based reverbs, because these days we can export in groups. I can do a quick draw of this. Okay, kind of thing here. So here's the template. So this is the front end of the template. How many tracks do we have? Loads, right? We've got lots of tracks, blah blah blah, blah, the whole thing. And then you can call these groups, subgroups, steps, substems. I'm gonna call these groups, and then stems. So here I'm gonna have a smaller number of groups. Some tracks will be sent to this group, some tracks will be sent to this group, etc., right? Etc., etc. And these are these guys here. First, this guy here. Okay, so if we go, we open the entire template. So these guys are all the tracks that we've got loaded, all these tracks. But then here at the bottom, we've got these groups. See these guys here. These, which I'll show you later on. But as you can see, string short high, string short low, strings long high, strings long low here, etc. Right? String runs. So it's like group. We're gonna have Brahms, all the choir tracks, harp, percussion, top of the mix, percussion high, percussion mid, percussion low, sub-bomb type of percussion, timpani, like to have it separated, and auxiliary percussion, right? I could have more or others like ethnic percussion. I could have one for this. I prefer to separate high, mid, low kind of thing. So that is my organization when it comes to this, and here's where the mix happens. Okay, so here is where the mix happens. Here, mix. Okay. And then finally, we've got a smaller group of stems, such as, such as, if we go up here, see, we've got, these are the group of stems, just 5 or 6, sorry, orchestra, percussion, synths, pulses, bass, and other. So we're gonna have a smaller group of tracks, and obviously we have more groups, right? But some of these groups go here, some of this group over here, and some of this group over here. Okay, here's where the mastering happens. Okay, so if you see, if we go here, here are the groups, and see, here's where we've got the mastering. In this case, a little bit of multiband compression. In this case, a little bit of extra compression with the shadow hills, and then a little bit of analog saturation, like this with this guy. In this case, because this is a percussion bass, this has a little bit of a spiff, this is my mastering chain. You don't have to replicate, but this is my this for percussion. Adds a little bit of oomph, aggression, and attack, especially to percussion. For more orchestral stuff, I use Sooth, and that's it. And then finally, a little bit of fresh air. Maybe a little bit too much, but just to brighten things a little bit. 28, 18. If you see, I've got this mastering chain pretty similar and consistent across all the stems, because what we want is for the this is the master at the end. Everything gets routed to master. So what we want is that at the end, the sum of these sounds exactly the same as the master. And if we had yes, if we had all the mastering plugins in the master bus, then the master bus doesn't not just sound louder, but also different in sound and timbre. And when you send your music to DAP, to the DAP mixing stage, what you do not want is for the engineer to have to figure out how you treated your master, right? Because they are going to be switching from master to stems sometimes. So they have your and well, anyway, they're going to be switching from master to stems, and the sound needs to be the same, right? Mixed up process or stage is the process where they mix your music with the dialogue and sound effects, right? And so your music will work well with dialogue and sound effects, except when it does not work well, right? And so at that point, they are going to need to maybe it's like, oh, there's a shaker in the percussion bass or in the percussion stem. Let's just get rid of the percussion altogether to keep the music, but so they can keep the emotional component of the music, and they have the flexibility because you send them the stems to remove some of the elements that are conflicting with whatever things that they are mixing with that maybe you didn't have into consideration because you didn't have them during while you were composing, right? So because you were composing to kind of temp sound effects and or not final sound effects, and there's some things that you didn't see because they weren't there. Okay, so it's important for you to send groups, but those groups need to sound, or stems in this case, these guys, the sum of them needs to sound exactly the same as master. Okay, that's why the mastering is applied here. So you're mastering essentially 6 times. No, you're not mastering 6 times, but you are loading mastering plugins 6 times, which means that those mastering plugins have to be fairly efficient CPU wise because you're gonna be loading 6 times this guy. So make sure that they are very efficient. So that's that. Cool. Any questions? Hopefully it makes sense. Cool. You can this presentation can be downloaded. You can rip it from from YouTube, I guess. You can or it's gonna stay in YouTube, so you can watch a replay if you want. So see. Cool. Let's continue. Thanks for the tip. Perfunctory. Cool. Let's continue. So more. See where I'm. Okay, message template, Marc's template. Let's go. So let's we talked about this. Let's go to Marc's template. Okay, so the version of my template, why is it the way, so why I have a template configured the way this is. And so generally I do the type of projects that I do are kind of like the last 5 movies that I've done this year. It's been a very busy year for me, and they are cataloged into the kind of like ultra low budget TV movie. It's kind of like $500,000 budget projects. That's for the movie that generally go to Lifetime, Hallmark Channel, Netflix, Amazon Prime, this kind of thing, right? Usually it takes 3 months. The entire production takes like 3 months generally. So you're gonna see 1 month pre-production, 1 month kind of like production shooting and a few more things there, and then 1 extra month for music and the entire post-production. So moves very fast generally. The budgets are not huge, and not just moves very fast, but also um, the distribution is very fast, which I love in this case, because you're working on the movie, you're done, and then month and a half later is on TV already. So that's nice. I like that. I'm impatient. But on the other hand, again, there's not a big budget, and there's usually no time to mix the music. So my template is adapted to this type of projects. I'm composing the music. I'm done composing. When I'm done, music should sound good enough for it to be sent to dub. Okay, so my template has to mix the music for me. I won't be able to mix the music. Music needs to sound mixed and mastered when finished composing. I need to add mixing plugins to groups and mastering plugins to my stems. Plugins cannot add latency. That's another thing. You can use beautiful UAD plugins, right? But if they add 48 seconds of latency or delay, then you are not going to be able to record ostinatos. And I used to use them, and I had the delay compensation. I would activate that, and so like I would deactivate the plugins as I'm composing and then activate them back. But I don't do this anymore. I just have plugins loaded that do the job, sound good, are nice on CPU, and also they don't add any latency. The max amount of latency that I've got added in my template because of plugins inserted is 2.1 milliseconds, I think it is. If we go here, and 0.7, 2.1 milliseconds. 2.1 milliseconds here. It's super small, but hopefully you can see. There's this guy here, 2.1 milliseconds of added latency because of I think it's the J37, I think it is. Yes, J37, it's adding 2.1 milliseconds. And then in my master bus, I have 2.8. No, 1.3. 1.3. So that's it. Oh, I just saw in my sub bomb I've got 21. What the heck? What's this? Is it low in there? No. Is this guy here? Why? Do I have it configured? In is it the oversampling that's doing this? A little bit, but not much. 20. What is 1 millisecond? I'll take a look at this, but usually this is lower. Anyway, this is no bueno, no good, because this gets added to the entire template. Cool. I have to take a look at this. But be very careful with this. So that is that was kind of like the premise. Okay, so this is the last version of my template. Let's get started. Let's go front end. Let's see what tracks I've got loaded, what libraries I'm using, etc., etc., etc. So usually up here. So many of these tracks, again, just beware. I just moved from I just migrated from one computer to another one. So from the MacBook Pro, M1 Max, 64 gigs of RAM, to Mac Studio M1 Ultra, 128 gigs of RAM. This is the M1, not the M2. And I bought the M1 just because the M2 is not that big of an improvement. There's some certainly things that are better, but with my laptop was already doing fine. I knew that with this one would do no problem, and I found this for a third of the price of same spec M2 used on eBay. So that's why I bought this one. I thought it would be more efficient. And so because I just migrated from one computer, there may be certain things that may not work. Hopefully everything works. But okay, so my template actually starts here, right? But before we go here, generally when I'm working on a movie, the tracks. Say this is not working. The tracks a load tracks up here for kind of like sounds that are not in my template that I need to have. Also up here I've got the Cubase divided, and up here I'll have the music, dialogue, temp, video, markers, tempo, time signature, and then hidden symphony. And then chord, the chord. This is just because I did a YouTube video recently and I transcribed hidden symphony. Remove. So no, I will not have the hidden symphony generally. So that's that. And then we move straight to the track that I did for this specific project. And then I have a series of tracks here that I call the sketching patches. And the sketching or fast action patches are, so my initial kind of like, first, 20 or 30 tracks are kind of like, if we follow the 80-20 rule, if we follow the 80-20 rule, what would be the 20%? Like, imagine that you don't have a computer like this and you have to load a template that's smaller so it doesn't, overload your CPU. What are the 20% of the tracks that we would need to be able to write 80% of the music, right? So in an orchestral context or an orchestral cinematic context, what would be the minimum effective dose type of template that would allow us to write as much, 80% of the music that we need to write generally, right? The most useful tracks. And to me, for the music that I write in my style, these are the tracks that I have. I call them sketching patches, and then I've got the string basics and a little bit of percussion here down below. Okay, this has grown over time, but it started with, okay, I may need something, so when I hit the keyboard, I have the orchestral sound, right? Something like this. Yeah. This big, non-realistic, kind of like cinematic short notes, in unison, or not in unison, but kind of like homophonic short notes kind of sound, right? And the same, by the way, you can see the libraries. Basically, old Albion. I have tons of old non-updated libraries. I also have the updated version. But if there's something, sometimes they update or upgrade libraries, like Cinestrings version 1, the original one, and then 1.4 was like the big improvement, and then 2 was the new UI, and they cleaned up the samples, etc. But with all this process, some things improved, but also the aggression of the staccato, of the spiccato specifically, got a little bit lost, right? Like I can prove this to you. Where is it? This is Cinestrings short notes. There you go. Where's it short? We're gonna load it. Right? And then if we go to 2, obviously, there you go. So I'm not gonna match the volume, but dang, sorry. So let's see. Sorry. I'm gonna. And then. Alright, so here we go. Obviously, also I would have to match the. See, it also changes the position a little bit and changes the room feel, and it's the same mic configuration. Obviously, it has a little bit more of room. That's the biggest difference that you hear in sound. But also the grid, if you pay attention to just the sound, the grid is lost. It's a little bit cleaner, but that's also a little bit more mellow. That, and I love that. that part, which is it's a little bit a tad too much sometimes, but I love it for accenting short notes. So then when they so what I'm the only thing that I'm trying to explain is that I got tons of alt libraries just because of whatever it is that they had. So in this case, the version 1.0 of Albion, in this case, you can recreate this with Albion, the last version, obviously. But it is Symphobia and Albion. Basically, that's what it is here when it comes to short notes. These guys here. Right? With a little bit of, panning things around. And also internally, there's a little bit of EQ. If we go here, let's go nitty gritty. And we go EQ. There you go. See, there's a little bit of a curve inside each one because to avoid frequency stacking. But there you go. This is what we've got. Okay, let me catch up with you guys. Again, thanks for the tip. Hello from Madagascar. Yes, please. Let it stay in YouTube. Yes, for sure. I will. 100%. It will not. I will not unpublish it. Hey. Cubase shows the latency on the plugins. Yes, in the mixer. When you load it, initially don't. You have to configure it to show the latency. I think it's somewhere around up here in the mixer. It would be great if this stream would stay. It will. It will stay. No worries. That's. Hola Marc, ¿qué pasa? Saludos, gentes buenas y sonoras. ¿Qué pasa? Combo Veracruz. I've missed you. Hello from Turkey. Good day. Excelente, que bueno ver este contenido también en español. Dinos. Well, we'll do what I can. The newer libraries ruin also only the yeah. Sometimes newer libraries are newer libraries. Sometimes they bring good things, sometimes they don't, and take more resources, etc. Exactly, not etc. Exactly. This is one thing that's obvious. So that is and many times, sometimes they offer more functionalities. Yes. Sometimes just don't, and they remove things. Also, it's very typical that for companies, and I don't blame them. It's just, but they recorded their samples 7 years ago, and then now they repurpose it in smaller packages to make them more accessible. Okay, fine, but those and sometimes they repurpose it in a form of a new player. Sometimes this player it makes life kind of like easier and more playable at the cost of less options for the user, but it's easier to use for the beginner user, which is fine. It's perfectly fine. I have no complaint. But in this case, sometimes I prefer to go back to what I used initially. That's fine. So also, yeah, that's it. But I just wanted to stress that the recording is the same, the sample is the same, and heck, these are short notes. Like there's no much, magic needed for short notes. Like they don't need like crazy coding for beautiful legato realistic transitions, right? It's just a short note, right? It is a short note. It's a sample. You hit a note, it gets triggered. End of the story. There's not much more to it, right? And so it doesn't really matter. I'm using the old library because I like the sound. End of the story. Cool. Same thing for long notes. In this case, it's no legato. It is a sustained. So I'm gonna same thing. So I've got the same thing, same combination. In this case, I added a requiem here at the end, but. Cool. So the only thing that you have to do here is just kind of a little bit of careful balance to make sure that all of this works. It's balanced. Also, if you see the volume changes in different sections, for example, for low strings in octaves, it's a little bit lower, etc. So there are different volumes. The Albion brass, low, longs is a little bit higher in volume for this to sound balanced and realistic. Even though it's a bigger section, bigger sound than a realistic orchestra. But and so obviously when we are controlling volume, we cannot control volume with CC7 because it would move all these faders up and down, and we do not want this. So we control volume in this case with CC11, which is expression, which to me is this guy here. And and that's how we control. There are some old libraries back then, if you remember. Most of the libraries these days will, have, oops, for dynamics not volume, for dynamics, this guy here. Right, and then for volume CC, so this is one modulation number one, and this is volume, but this does not control dynamics. And some libraries, and still these days, some libraries are not mapped to control volume with CC11. It's just in Contact, you would go in here, you would select all samples. So, sorry, edit all groups, not all samples, all groups. And then you add a MIDI CC like this, add modulator, external, MIDI CC. And when you add this, you add 11 and then -1. And that's it. And then, boom, you've got this. You have the ability to control this library or the volume of this library with CC11 in case it was not mapped. Okay, so that's what you gotta do. Because you want to balance volume inside Contact, and you want for these faders, the volume faders, to not move with CC7. Cool. So that's that. Yeah. A little bit of Apocalypse percussion, an epic boom here, some choir, piano. I can load these guys. But the epic boom here. Oops. There you go. Hopefully it'll work. Wait. Come on. No, doesn't work. Okay. So there are certain things that I have to fix, but let me just. Maybe I don't even have the. Yeah. Okay, it did. Fantastic. So this is it's an all percussion library from IDEO, from Ton. I think they released back in Ton Hammer days. I forgot that, but basically it's here. I have a little bit of the close and the far, and the far I can bring in with CC2 here, and so kind of thing. So when it's very active and I need a tight kind of percussion sound, then I keep it like this. And when I've got the space for a longer tail or decay kind of thing, I can do things like this. So it gives me a little bit of control. But basically, essentially, Apocalypse percussion gives me all the kind of percussion instruments combine the epic percussion instruments and orchestral percussion instruments more in the epic range, and then starting from the low section of the piano, the high section of the piano with low and high percussion. So it gives me all the percussion that I need for sketching. Obviously, then I've got the percussion down here separated and routed to different groups. An epic bomb, choir. You've heard the choir. Piano. For piano, I like to use noir. Kind of thing. Cool. Let's see if there's any questions. Logic is great. I love it. Used it for a while. Back in the day, Logic fantastic. There are many composers using Logic. Do you commit or convert MIDI to audio after done? Yes, of course. To submit to DAP. Thank you, Tamashi. I suggest stay in Contact 6 from my experience and never. Yeah. I've got. I used Contact 7. It's pretty, intense in resources. Um, all libraries, new libraries. How many terabytes of contact instruments do you have, and what do you store them on? You know what? So my story is okay. So my story is so the reason why I'm using this computer is because at some point I use a PC computer for the longest time, for over a decade almost, and I love PC. But it's not a PC thing, but the hard drive got corrupted, so it's not it's not Windows thing. It's just the hard drive got corrupted, and so I lost everything, and I had a backup, but the backup was corrupted as well. So it was this thing that happens once every so many years, but it happened to me, and that was a couple of years ago, and I thought, okay, and that PC was 4 year old, and I thought, should I rebuild the entire system, which it would take forever, into an already old ish system, or should I buy a new computer? And so back then the M1s got released, and so I decided to give it a test. Like, could I load the same thing that I've got into one, kind of like server PC computer plus one server. I had two computers, BE Pro, the whole thing, BE Ensemble Pro, the whole thing, right? Master server, over 200 gigs of RAM, the whole, complicated system. It crashed, and I decided, let me give it a try with these M1 computers, and I went from that to a Mac to a laptop, and I made it work. There was the laptop that I was using, which is just replaced with this one. And the reason was not because it was not working for music production. The reason was like when I'm doing this exactly specifically, right? When I'm composing and screen sharing and live video encoding, streaming, recording internally, and sometimes I do the same thing. Plus, I have a Zoom session with people. In that regard, the live video encoding from the MacBook Pro M1 is lacking. It was not good. The audio, no problem, but that video component was not good. That is why I bought this one, or replaced that one with this one. Um, this is the hard drive that I was using for samples in my PC. So as you can see, I think it says sample 7 TB. So I was using a regular SSD drive with 7 TB. That's what I used. Obviously, I had backups of this. And the reason why I have it here is because I have not moved all the samples from my old computer to this. So as I'm composing and I'm like, oh, this library is loaded in the template, but I don't even have the samples. Then boom, I move the sample. I did this consciously because like I don't want to move everything, because I kept moving everything and all the. So I don't know how much I have right now. But back then, out of these 7 TB, I think I had like four or five. I'm not the type of composer that has, which is quite a lot, but I'm not the type of composer that has so many libraries. I do have lots of libraries. I've been doing this for over a decade. I did my first paid movie, my first paid feature film in Hollywood, kind of thing, right? In 2010. And it's not like I've been super active the entire time, but I've been doing this for a while. And I'm not. I don't consider myself even to be a great composer or any of that, but 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 I've been evolving my tool little by little, and so once in a while you buy a library. I am not the type of person who buys every new release, and at this moment in time I am so lucky and so blessed that generally, because of the cinematic composing brand and the YouTube channel, sometimes they send us things, not even we asking. It's like, hey, can you do feel free to do a review, kind of thing, and boom, they send you the code of this new release that whatever brand Spitfire just did, whatever, right? That's why sometimes I do reviews. But I've never, like, I'm not the type of composers that's like, oh, the new hype, like the hype of the new library. It's just, my template works, and it's my sound. So anyway, all libraries and libraries, no more. So yes, no more. The controller is gone, and now I've got the MIDI Maker Sparrow 5. That's how it's called. And let's say it's mapped to the same thing. Good question. But 1, 11, 2. That's it. And then this is panning. I think that's basically what I've got. This one is 9 for I think it controls reverb in the Spitfire player. That's it. So, or no, tightness in the short samples. That's what it controls in that player. All right, cool. Let's continue. Question: what's the channel profile picture? I don't know. Um, we'll get to that in a second. Well, let's see. I think it's, I don't know. I'll get to that in a sec. Do you Okay? Do you or any of you guys recommend a video which explain all the difference between staccato, legato, pizzicato? We definitely, we've got one. We have one. But let's do this. Studio. Now you're gonna see all the channel data, but content. Oof. Can we filter the shorts? Monetization, visibility. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Let's see. 50 channels. Or maybe we can go to, let's go to the channel. And that we can answer the question about the profile. Okay. I don't know if you were asking about this. But this is me with beard. Usually I shaved on weekends, and that's why this guy looks like a different person. If that's a question that you were asking. And if we go to videos, we did one. Orchestration basics. I think yes, this one. Orchestral basics, the instrument families, and I think that I talk about the next one is articulations. So these two, hopefully, this helps. And then going back to, maybe not in the topic of this video, but how do you manage all your tracks, ideas, and projects? Do you have some sort of database? How do you manage all your tracks, ideas, and projects? When like tracks, it's like, you mean like not like a track, right? You mean like a song or an idea, right? If that is, usually I have a folder for ideas, and if I'm like, oh, I've got this inspiration, this melody, I'll just record it there and I leave it there. But generally, I don't I don't need to kind of like I don't need to store inspiration in a way. I When I'm working on a project, on a movie, generally it takes me a month, like between 3 and 5 weeks. And so the only thing that I need is to spend time to come up with one good idea once for those 5 weeks, let's say. And then after that, everything creatively is done. What do you mean? So when I'm doing a movie, first there is the concept suite, then break into scene 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And then scoring. So this is where here's art and inspiration comes. So when I'm doing a movie, the first thing that I'll read the script, I'll watch the movie several times, and I'll come up with a musical concept. And this sometimes is it's a mixture of, you know, it's sometimes a mixture of an intangible idea, like an idea, like literally, okay, so we're gonna have this cello 3 notes motif that's going to be kind of like a little bit dissonant in nature, the intervals, because it's a dark movie. And as we move from act 1 to act 3, it's a 5-act movie, for example. And then at the end of Act 3, we've got the first climax, and then at the end of Act 4, we've got the biggest climax. So as we there, we're gonna be processing the sound of the cello solo, and we're gonna add some sort of like saturation and distortion. And then as we resolve at the end of Act 1, we're gonna go back to clean. I just came up with this idea. It's a stupid idea, but it's a concept, right? And so that is the hypothetical part of or theoretical, or intangible. mixed with what are the actual notes and what is the exact motif, right? And how it sounds, what cello sound, etc. That's when you are coming up with, and it's a very simple concept. Sometimes it could be something way more developed. It is this musical theme, right, that you have composed for this movie. So that is the concept, step number one. Step number two is like, okay, great, let's develop this concept into an entire suite, how far we can take this. And then I compose a suite, and I'm not scoring to picture yet, right? I'm creating the suite, right? This, we are still developing the initial concept, right? And once we have done the suite, then I break it, and I place parts of the suite under some scenes, and then I send them to director or producer, and then they're like, and I'm like, I'm going the right direction. If they are like, yes, thumbs up, then I've got everything that I need to do the rest of the movie. At this point, is pure craftsmanship. Scoring, well, you could, what just happened? There you go. It's pure craftsmanship at this point. Scoring, because it's that's why you see sometimes composers that will do, and it's not good or bad, and we don't need to say names, but they will work on this. They will work on this, and then they will have, a series of additional music composers that will do this, because the creative part, the genius part has already been done. Right now, this is pure craftsmanship. This is just the scoring, and so I don't like, sometimes I have an idea, I just let it go. Like I don't destroy it. So sometimes I do, but sometimes like I just had an idea, and it's like, okay, whenever I have a movie, I'll work hard on this movie to create a concept, an idea that works fantastic for that particular project, and then with that, I've got material for the next 5 weeks. So cool. All right, how are we doing in time? We've got 1 hour left. Let's continue. Thanks for the fantastic questions. And expression maps or single track. So expression maps or single tracks, a combination of both in my case, for me. What else? And going back here. It's a little bit freaky to see so many. Where is it? So many of my faces here. So let's go back here. Have to do this, bring it here, and then go back here, and then boom, there you go. External SSD to store stuff like VSTs. Yes, you can have it's gonna be way cheaper to get an external SSD than, in my case, for example, to have everything internal here, because they make pay you a lot. And for external samples or libraries, yes, external SSDs are fast enough. It sometimes affects a little bit the load. These drives in here are faster than external SSDs, but it's fast enough. Orchestral Tools had some explaining videos about how instruments are played in their YouTube channel. Fantastic, great. Thanks for the tip or for the recommendation. All right, great. Yeah, that was a question. Surgeon instrumentation series, David. Cool. What keyboard do you use? Complete Control 88. No, this is an old Akai that I took apart. Okay, this you're gonna laugh about this. What just happened? Why? Okay, yeah. So there you go. There was an Akai, like the same one that Anne Catherine has, that you can see, right? Like the 88 Pro. I forgot the name, but you can see the entire box. I literally took apart the box and took the key bed out, right? So you can take the key bed out. This is called the key bed, and I kept all the components in here, because if they are not in the see this is the pitch wheel, and this is the mod wheel, just like this. This is how pro my setup is, and this is the this guy that would go here. Anyway, you get the idea. And I kept all the components connected, because if you don't connect everything the way it's supposed to be in the box, then it starts triggering random MIDI data. The reason why I did this is because I could not fit my keyboard under this desk in particular. So I found a solution, because that's what we do. All right. uh, Art Conductor 9 is freaking awesome. I've used it with friends. I still don't. I'm considering it. I don't know why I'm still not using it. I guess again because I'm using very old libraries. Answer this question here. I'm currently trying Art Conductor. Art Conductor 9 is amazing. Babylon, Babylon Waves. I think it is right. And I don't know why I still don't use it. But I guess again I've been using these libraries. I know them very well, and sometimes I know the key switches so fast that I start composing right. For example, I'm like, okay, violins legatos, let's go, and I'll boom boom. So CSS violins legatos, and I'll do like oh, there you go. Is it too loud? A click. Let's bring it down. Yeah, minus 14. Right or So right there, what I just did, two different things. The first one was legato. So it was sustained legatos consortino, the first one, and the second one was sustained legato without sordino, right? And I do it that fast. So I say, okay, I need consortino or without sordino, right? Right, that's that. And so to me, with Babylon Waves, I would have to go okay, boom, legato, boom, and it's really useful. Or you can do key switches obviously as well, but I don't have that. My template is not that big. I don't have that many libraries, even though it seems like. But I've been using it for so long. At this point, it feels it's very fast for me. Oops. Again. All right. Cool. What else? I just had my first kit. I find a hard time focusing on making music that might or not sell. Find hard time focusing on making music that might or not sell. Any tips on having productivity and inspiration with a newborn? I started this class at 4 a.m. in the morning, 4:30. There you go, inspiration. You just adapt. How old is he? I guess at the first year is complete chaos, and you just adapt. It's amazing to realize how many things you are able to do with the newborn once you adapt, and then you're gonna be wondering how much time I was wasting before, right? So just adapt, in my opinion. I've got two. They are 4 and 5. I'm saying that I still have no fucking clue what I'm doing, but but for sure, you have to find a way and you have to adapt. I like this 4 a.m. in the morning that I wake up. It's not like the unhealthy. I go to sleep at 8 p.m. So baby time. And that was the hack for us, for Ali and I, to be able to continue to do the things that we were doing or to produce the level of output that we were producing before the kids, after the kids. And also our kids were like 1 and 2 during COVID, and that was just nuts. In terms of like we loved being able to be around them so much, but also in terms of a structure, it was messy for like work life balance, because cinematic composing takes. I've got three things in my life: my family, cinematic composing, and my composing career. And so there's quite a bit to juggle. And so see this usually to me 4 a.m. 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. for me. This is what I call deep work time, and or in other words, creative time. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is like 6 hours of deep work. Just the split in between with me having to take the kids to school, which takes like 45 minutes from waking up to the school is pretty close. So that is, and then after that, I've got meetings and urgencies and stuff like this. So it's just, I would say you have to find the schedule that works for you. Are or have you composed in Dolby App? No, never, ever. At some point, I did surround for a little bit. I do a stereo, Most composers work in quad. Some composers work in quad, yeah. Um, but many composers work in just the stereo. Uh, so Hans, will work in definitely in surround, and but there are many composers that just Harvey Gregson Williams is stereo, uh, and used to be surround at some point, but many composers work just in yeah, many composers work in surround for sure. Yeah, but many composers work just in stereo, and then the surround happens later on in the mix. Okay, and so I'm all about simplifying, and keeping it as simple as possible. And it keeps on working with a director producer who's stuck on temp tracks. Um, just they I don't consider it to they are so to me when I'm working with a director, I don't consider it to be they are stuck in temp tracks. They they I always consider I just came into the project. They know way more about the project than myself, and they are ultimately the ones that take the ultimate creative decisions. And I feel you I'm composing music, and I feel guided by someone who has a broader vision than myself. And so I just I got a similar question the other day. I was teaching a class, a momentum class, and they were like, so when you get asked for a review, how do you deal with it for a revision, for a rewrite? How do you deal with your ego? And I'm like, dude, if I get a revision, a review, a rewrite, I get scared that I'm gonna get fired, and I am grateful that they it's like if they give me a rewrite note, and then I do the rewrites, and they give me another note, I feel grateful that I'm still working on that project, right? And I'm still grateful. I'm grateful that they are taking. You know how much time does it take to actually, you know, listen to a track, and they're like, okay, how do I guide this composer? So because they cannot speak notes or harmony or orchestration, all right? So they speak emotion, they speak storytelling, and they're making the biggest effort they can in explaining what the scene what the scene needs emotionally, so you understand what to do musically. And it's that dialogue is hard and beautiful at the same time. And so if they come back to you twice and you are still not fired, you should be grateful. Or that's how I feel. You get the time, effort, knowledge, expertise, and art of someone who has a bigger vision than you, spending time to perfect your music while you are being paid. So they are teaching you in a way. You grow as a composer with those notes. So that's how I take notes. For me, it's just such a blessing and a pleasure, and such an opportunity most of the times, right? And that's how I see it. Um, hey Mark, is there a simple way to map polyphonic aftertouch to respond to vibrato on strings, for example? I not that I know of, and generally this is limited. This is limited by the library's limitation itself. Unless you go into sample modeling or things like this, I wouldn't say so. With kind of traditional sample libraries, based on what I know, I don't think there's an easy way. For you always making new silly songs every day. It's the best. Try to record them. You can sample that and turn it into a sample. Uh, Thank you, Mark. We'll give 4 a.m. a try. If you do a 4 a.m. a try, make sure to sleep your hours. We go to sleep at 8 p.m. Here gonna use your work day. How about procrastination? Um, I think kids are a little bit of a cure for procrastination. Um, I think so, but yeah, my day. If generally I have my blocks again, the beginning of the day. So beginning of the day, so from 4 a.m. to kind of like 9, 10, something like this, depending on day. Sometimes some days it's till 12. It's deep work. This is very important for us creatives. Deep work. Or even if you are not just composing music, sometimes you are running a company, sometimes you're an entrepreneur, sometimes you have a 9 to 5, right? But what is your deep work time? I think that to me is very important, right? This is where I would prepare a class, right? Here's where I would be composing if I'm working on a movie. Here's where I would be if I'm doing more if it's more in cinematic composing and it has to do more with where we're going, like the visionary tasks of a CEO kind of thing, which sounds a little bit grand, but basically it just means like, okay, what we're doing next quarter, in what direction we're taking cinematic composing. So that's where the focus goes, or that's where the deep work time is. So that's that. And that's time that's for you, that it hopefully it's as long as possible and you can focus on that one thing. You have to be able to have time to focus on one thing to be able to do something great, right? And there's no other way around it. You cannot, you need time to deep, right? To go deep into that topic so you start creating good stuff. So that's, and then usually after that I've got kind of like meetings and urgencies. So from kind of like 10, 11, 12 till 2, 3 p.m., something like this. And then I organize the next day. I've got an alignment meeting with Ali, and then it's kids time. So from like 4 p.m. to the end of the day, it's kids time generally. On Fridays, it's slightly different because we've got all the exec meetings and all the so cinematic composing. It's not a corporation, but it's a small entrepreneurial bootstrap company. They started from nothing with no venture capital or any of that. Obviously, like it's like it's not like Spitfire like got founded and things like this, right? It's a small little company that got started from scratch from our own money, but has grown a little bit. Right now, we've got a team. It's if you count teachers and support, etc., it's 22 people. So there's for these to continue to run and grow. There's a small executive team, etc. So we've got all the meetings happen on Friday. We've got all the weekly huddles, the weekly check-in meetings, and that's all organized on Friday. Because I don't like to have meetings in between, deep work. And the only thing that at the moment is very much in between everything, and is something that's being replaced, it's all the momentum application calls. I'm still taking those application calls. It's Zoom calls, but we're bringing someone and being trained to replace me on that. But that's kind of how my day is organized. All right, let's go back. Mm, I've never used BBC Orchestra. Again, and about Abbey Road, it's just I did that. They sent it to me, and it was a while since doing the last YouTube video, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do a reactions video, but that led to something a little bit bigger, which is the review. But going back here, great questions. Thank you so much. Great questions, by the way. So, where were we? So we are discussing. So we talked about why we need a template, front end versus back end. We talked about message template, and now we're here in Marc's template. And so in Marc's template, the reason why I created or adapted this template is because in the last movie I had to write 84 minutes of music in 3 weeks. So the template I needed to be able to compose fast, and also the template needs to mix my music for me, but the plugins cannot add latency. It must be light on CPU. And also finally, organization. When I'm done composing, I need to be able to hit A, let's export this puppy, and then for this to be able to export not just the master, but separated the stems, orchestra, percussion, synths, pulses, bass, and other, in a way that the sum of the stems or the sum of the groups sound exactly the same as the master, right? So this is, and I'm explaining how everything is configured. So I'm gonna go real quick. I've got the short orchestral that I showed you. I've got the long orchestral that I showed you earlier as well. This guy here, choir, right? And all these are what I call the sketching patches. Apocalypse for percussion, the piano. I've got some orchestral textures, things like this. Got the epic horns, kind of thing, epic trumpets. Kind of thing. like the basic stuff. Woodwind short, woodwind long, brass short, brass long, etc. Like the if I had to have, I've got a few more things like stingers, some pre-orchestrated things, but like the basic things. So basically, string short, strings low. If I were to recommend this, where do I have this? Let me see. Bootcamp. I think it's this guy. Hopefully it is. Yes, yes. These would be the tracks that I would recommend. Where is this? There you go. No, here. Sketching patches. So basically, you're gonna have percussion, orchestral epic percussion, and sub bum. And then for others, you're gonna have no, where is it? Oops. There you go. Full orchestra long notes, full orchestra short notes. Full section, string long notes, string short notes, brass long notes, brass short notes. So sustains and staccatos basically. And woodwinds long notes and woodwinds short notes. That's basically it, right? And then finally, continuing with the sketching patches, I'll have some kind of like orchestral tutti todo kind of thing, orchestral and epic percussion from the lows to the highs, with like the apocalypse that I showed you. A sub bum, it's always nice to have for cinematic music, and then other tracks in that section of the sketching patches. I'll have a piano, choir, horns, like because we're writing cinematic music, aren't we? We're gonna have kind of like a big epic horn, something like this. I selected this and I thought that the sound would come. This guy. Kind of thing, right? Trumpet section, legato, same thing in the stingers. So with that, could we compose a quick, quick and dirty kind of like orchestral mock-up? Yes, we could. We've got the piano, we've got the yes, so we could. So that's what these the sketching patches. Why do I have the sketching patches? Two outcomes, two goals. One, be able to sketch. Sometimes just sketching, right? I'm gonna compose a love cue. Let me see. I think it's going to be something like this. Let's see. Mm. Mm. Cool, awesome, great. Boom, we've got the sketch. And I think I'm gonna have some sort of strings or something, right? And then you can add the strings. Or sometimes like, yeah, I have the idea of it's gonna be kind of like a big action cue, and it's gonna do something like cool. And then I'm gonna have something like kind of something like yeah. And then I'm gonna have a awesome, and boom. Is this a finished mockup? No, no, no. This is just a sketch, but I just needed to pull some quick patches there, or fast actions patches, to be able to recreate the sound. Now we do have to orchestrate this, right? And quantize and do it. But fast action patches or sketching patches. Cool. And I have not finished discussing all of this. These are the sketching patches. Then I also have what I call the strings basics. And in the strings basics, I will have like like a low staccatos, things like this. Like I know I think it's too loud, right? A little bit too loud. This patch is a combination of Symphobia and see all libraries again. Symphobia, Albion, and LA scoring strings, which adds this bite to the thing without, with, without, with. I always like to add brightness, bite, and to sounds in a versatile way. It adds so much detail to your music, especially in lower strings. But yeah, kind of like high staccato strings, lower staccato strings. I like to have also strings in octaves, like sustain strings like this. See if it loads. kind of thing. And then this hits an ensemble, a strings ensemble group with more reverb. And then I've got the low strings, which will have less reverb, even though it has a tail because of where it got recorded. But sometimes you're like, I'm gonna compose this love piece or whatever, and then you're like, I'm gonna use these strings ensemble patch, and then you record the entire thing, right? Why this sounds so bad? I don't know why, but let's say that we would use this one. Hello. What is going on? What's going on? Maybe this? Ah, we got lucky. All right, cool. Let's go here. So we record this guy, and now we're gonna record the lows, okay? So a much better way of doing this, and this is like, oh, strings. A more cinematic way of doing this is to, if you're going to use a strings ensemble patch, is separate the mid-high strings to the lowest strings. So the lowest strings, have them separated, and use like a low strings patch routed to a low strings group that has less reverb, because reverb makes your mix muddy, makes the sounds generally more beautiful. It enhances the sound, makes it elevates the sound, makes it a little bit more cinematic sometimes with the right amount of reverb, but also makes this, especially the low end, more muddy. And so we want to avoid that. And so when you're using an ensemble patch, I always recommend, load the ensemble patch twice and have one routed to higher strings and another one routed to lower strings, and to the lowest strings stem have no reverb. So I'm gonna get rid of these notes. I'm gonna create, so this is a strings ensemble, and I'm gonna go up here to the strings ensemble low strings. So I'm going to just duplicate this guy. I'm gonna put it up here. No, let me just draw this guy here. So now I'm going to select this one and this one, and now I'm gonna select here the strings ensemble, the low. So there you go. So R. I did retrospective recording. This one I messed up, so I have to bring it down 2 octaves. And now I could control the high strings and move them more to the left. Much better. So if you are not going to use individual string sections, violins 1, 2, etc., you want to work fast like this, ensemble patches still have 2 ensemble patches. That is why I have 2 ensemble patches in what I call the strings basics. I've got the low strings and the high strings, ensemble strings, and then low strings sustain. So these are the other patches that I recommend. If you've got, I recommend this in any template for what I call the initial sketching patches and the string basics. And then we will go to orchestral enhancers, which basically is percussion. You can take a screenshot of this. But this is what I would recommend for a small template with 20, 30, 40 tracks max. That kind of like follows the 80-20 rule. Where did I put this? Here, where we've got 20% of the tracks that so we can write 80% of the music. All right, and then obviously, and this concludes this section. Obviously, my template is way bigger. It's got way more things. But see, most of them are deactivated. I use them, but not as often as these things up here. Okay, cool. And obviously, yes, I've got the violins two, violins one, violins two, viola, etc. But and I use them all the time. But if I were to start a template from scratch, I would start with the the fast action patches, and then some string basics. These are the ones that I recommend, and some orchestral enhancers. What I call orchestral enhancers. It's basically percussion, but celesta, some celesta, arp, cymbal swells, piatti, shakers, things like this. And then in the mid and low, tam tam, snare, timpanis, grand casa, sub bomb, and drums. Cool. Because it's very useful to have these guys. Okay. So that's that. I'm reading your questions. Is your workflow? I have a 9 to 5. Times I write music or practice is before 9 to 5 work day, and I come back home at 6 p.m. and then I write till 11:30. Yeah, that's great. 11. Then I guess you will wake up at what? Like 8 or maybe something like this, or like 7. All right, cool. Is your workflow based on purchasing virtual instruments as you go and not get attached to any subscriptions? What are your thoughts on the Composer Cloud? I don't have any subscription. The subscription is I prefer to own in this case. So you just explained before older. Yeah, thank you. Just do it. A fancy new library will not make composing. Yep. I agree. Yes. It's too much. I think I made a little bit of a mistake putting well, not a mistake, but I just I focused my last few YouTube videos into React kind of, or like first reaction to a new sample library, and then the 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 review on the library, and because of the project that I had in mind, like wanted to compare these three libraries, and I wanted to transcribe Beethoven, Haydn, so some classic music, and then transcribe some field music, John Powell, John Williams, and Chris Young, and I thought it'd be fun. But that also put too much focus into a library review, and I generally feel more comfortable doing videos about, it's more like educational videos, based on what has worked for me, and what I could potentially share with other people, and bring some value potentially, rather than library review. I found that I think it just hype up and talk about things that are nice, but are not needed to become to compose, to become a composer. It's just like what you've mentioned. So, by the way, next UX 13 will have a based orchestral composing library integrated. Iconica Lite, nice. Iconica is great. Iconica is beautiful. Oop. My favorite string library, as for now, is Cinematic Studio Strings. It has a little bit of a learning curve. It is not. Someone mentioned in the video, and I love that comment. In the comment went something like this. You can find it in one of the last videos. In the past, I used to compose with. I didn't have a computer. I used to compose with my old, I don't know, name of synth, right? And the sounds that I had was the sounds that I had in the synth keyboard, and that's it, right? We didn't have legatos, we didn't have blah, blah, blah. Now these days I compose with the newest libraries, and everything got so complicated, right? Because it is true. Like if you want to do something like this, let me see if I find it. I think it's this guy. Let me see. Yep. Took me 20 minutes to write this melody. 25 minutes. Look at, if I go here, there's nothing freaking quantized. Like, well, this note starts this, to compensate with all this, I have to, have like a 150 milliseconds of delay to play this patch. It's a freaking nightmare because it has so much latency because of the legato sounds freaking super ultra realistic, right? This and I hate this is my main my to go library, but it just look at this. Like look at this. So it's like ton tin ten ton. It's like, oh my gosh, like there's no way I can. And so imagine for like ton ton like imagine recording this with between 330 milliseconds and 100 seconds, depending on the legato transition. If you hit harder, then it's faster. If you hit softer, then it's longer. But it's a longer legato and it's more portable. So great, awesome, fantastic to have that much flexibility. You know how hard it is to perform something like this? Which, hey, if you want realism, you have it there, but it also takes time, and so it kills creativity. There's a moment in time for this, and it is great. And there are many times the type of projects that I work on that I mentioned to you, we do not get to record with an orchestra or with live instruments because of budget limitations. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we do record, but many times, and so it's very important that the samples give us this capability. But that being said, right, inspiration, speed, being able to produce music fast, it's sometimes equally as important. Not sometimes, it's equally as important, right? And sometimes sometimes we are composing orchestral music with sample libraries. And the outcome expected is the typical production sound of a sample, like a mock-up, right? And it can sound outstanding, but we do not need to recreate realism sometimes, because what's expected is the sound that comes out from the computer. And I'm not saying it's better or worse, I'm just saying it's different. And sometimes when we go after the realism, trying to emulate what an orchestra does, an orchestra is an orchestra, and the computer or sample libraries, it's a completely different instrument. It is not an orchestra. It just happens to be that it tries to emulate an orchestra, but it is not an orchestra, or it is not the strings, it's not violins one section. It is not. It has the same name on the cover, but it is not. It is a sample library that happens to sound similar to that. And so when you are composing, sometimes if you're recreating, emulating a classical piece, put the time. But just understand that sometimes you are composing something different. You are composing something that maybe it's called cinematic orchestral music with samples. That's that. And sometimes with long notes and staccatos is enough. And sometimes that added realism is nice and needed, and you want that. At the end of the day, you are the ultimate creator for that piece that you are creating, and you decide what to do with that. And sometimes we do not need to spend time, with ultra realistic legatos just because we can't do it, right? Sometimes we just need, a freaking staccato ostinato and a melodic line on top. And sometimes we need a melody that does something pam parabam type of thing, but we can recreate that tankin tentom parabam type of thing with a combination of staccatos, spiccatos, and sforzatos kind of notes without the legato transitions in between. And we can do this way faster with key switching or with articulation maps, way faster than having to get the legato perfectly working, because legatos get complicated when, combining different lengths and the speeds and the attacks and all this good stuff that these libraries can do. And the one that does the best job, in my opinion, so far, I've tried many, is Cinematic Studio Strings. But anyway, hopefully you get the point. don't get overwhelmed with this. Don't even buy the idea that you need to have the last library that does the best legatos, or to get that library that was they recorded the expression of each note to keep things alive. Yes, great, fantastic. Sometimes just put your hands on the keyboard, start composing, right? And go back to the fundamentals. We got long notes and short notes. Let's make it work, right? We made it work. Like, freaking go listen old mock-ups from, like, you know, it's like 10, 12 years ago that still sound freaking awesome. That's just the art of creating a mock-up with less resources than we've got now. So it's important, in my opinion. Hopefully some of you resonate with this. The Elgar video was great. Thank you. Please tell us again what's the name of the new faders you are. So this is the MIDI Maker, Sparrow 5, MIDI Maker, the MIDI Maker. How's your RAM? The RAM is 128 and monitor, activity monitor. Memory. So yeah, you don't want to use here anymore. In Mac computers here doesn't really matter. You want to look at the memory pressure. Basically, if this goes to yellow or red, then it's bad. But so far so good. But I've got also many tracks disabled, as you can see. All right, so hopefully you buy the idea of we're gonna have sketching patches, right, and fast action patches for the 80-20 rule. And this will allow you to compose music fast and efficiently and to sketch things. Then the rest of the tracks. Let's go real quick over the rest of the tracks. Let's see what we've got. So here are all my CSS strings. And I generally have separated longs and shorts for the, see? And then violins too, long and short. And then violas, long and short. And cellos, long and short, etc. Sometimes I duplicate the long or duplicate the short if I need to. And double bass is long and short notes. And then sample long and short notes. Why? Because if we go here, and we go to direct routing, you see the for example, viola short is routed to strings short high, and the cello short is routed to strings short low, but the cello long is going to strings long low, and the viola long, it goes to strings long high. In this case, I like to separate the long strings and the highest string, and the lowest strings and the shortest strings, because if we go here to the back end of the template and we move this out of the way, let's see the viola. The viola, strings long high, and we will have a little bit of send to the cinematic rooms, orchestral long high reverb, and then it'll have to this is Bahala room super long reverb. So that's a reverb, and you can see it here, and you can see Bahala and cinematic. But for the short notes, if we go here, short, what is two? Oh, let's go here. Oops, no, here. Strings short high. It just has a little bit of seventh heaven, a little bit of reverb. So it's a drier sound. It's a drier sound. Okay. And sometimes I get this question. So strings long notes will have more reverb than strings short notes, right? Yes. And strings high pitched will have more reverb than strings low pitched. Yes. Won't this make it sound like in different rooms? No. We'll just make it sound more modern and more more modern. And it will add clarity to the music, because again, for long high notes, you can add a lot of reverb. Like violins, harmonics, long notes, add as much reverb as you want. You will never have a problem there. it will not add muddiness. You can cut the low end of the reverb if you want for something like that. And for low notes you want no reverb. For low, especially long notes, you do not want reverb, and especially for low short notes, sorry, like an ostinato, like a cello ostinato, you want no reverb there, or just very little reverb. And in the same note, sometimes the way you will configure the library, you can have a more roomy type of sound, like far mics type of sound for those violins harmonics, because you want a little bit more like the room of the sound. Something I'm talking about, something like this. See, let me just prove it to you. Let's make violins. Oops. Let's make violins harmonic sound beautiful. Huh. That took quite a lot. So, so the same thing applies to how you configure your library. So you can go with, in this case, mix one, which is a more roomy type of sound for something like harmonics. So this has no extra reverb, or not much extra reverb. Um, it does have but the component is that I'm using mix one, right, which is kind of like farther away mics, um, and especially in a room like this library, the mix one is very ambient. So there you go. That's the what I'm trying to prove. So yes, and so the question that I said is like, so you've got different reverb, different sections even, or just the nature of the section. If it's short notes or long notes, like, is it not going to position in like different rooms? Blah, blah, blah? No, no problem. You'll see. And the question, and then the second question: what about if you're using key switches now, and you have a melody like what we just saw, ranting pam pirabam. So time, that is a long note supposedly. That it's a legato, right? And then you've got some spiccato. Time tan tan tirado. Are you going to separate? No, not really. So if I'm using key switches, it's a melody. It's kind of long notes. It's gonna stay there. So, and that is going to make the melody coherent, right? But sometimes you're gonna separate it in different tracks, right? The long notes go in a track that is routed to the long notes stem or group, and the staccatos and short notes below will go to a stem that has less reverb, right? Yes, but that's going to make the melody not sound coherent now because different. Not really, not that much, because the difference is not like I have a super huge, super long reverb for the long notes and a very dry, super short tail reverb for the short notes. It's not that big of a difference. It's subtle. So, and in an orchestral context, you don't feel that much of a difference. You don't feel the difference. It's small little nuances with that, when put together, makes a difference. When them all put together, improves the sound, gains clarity. But in an orchestral context, it does not feel jarring. And that is the concept. Because sometimes we learn about these theoretical concepts: long reverb, short reverb, high notes, short notes, blah, 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 the whole thing, right? And then you apply it in a way that's too drastic, and then it sounds wacky, sounds weird, right? And so all these ideas that make sense, the theoretical concept that makes sense, when applying, it's a very subtle. It's very subtle, the difference. Okay, cool. More. Where are we at? So rest of tracks. Yeah, we're taking a look at the other track. Let's see questions. Congratulations! You've received 100 messages today in the Restream chat. Yes, that's exactly why I did the video. I wanted at least 100 comments. I can call it for the. Just kidding. Um, how many? It's okay, cool. Simple orchestra, 60-ish instruments, independent sources, and in a computer is something emulated into just two channels, so the interface destroys scenes. Destroys anything. Yep, exactly. The interference destroys anything. Um, exactly. That's why we have to. I'll get to that in a second. So yeah, it's very different an orchestra performing live than we stacking tracks in an environment that everything gets summed into a two tracks or a stereo track. So yes, exactly. That's why the back end of the template, because it's very different. This is really important to understand this. RAM you use 128. What is the model of the screen you're using? It's an old LP 48-inch screen. So it's a big monitor. You can find it under $150 on eBay these days. I forgot the exact model, but I will. I can post it. I answered these questions recently and I forgot. But yes, then I'll post it later on after the chat. After the what is the model? Yep. Exactly. Hey, Cobro Frio, good to see you. It's been a while. Can you show us the Bahala? Yeah, yeah. Bahala. Let me show you all the reverbs if you want. Yeah, so Bahala, this is for kind of like short gated. This is for top of the mix or high pitched percussion. Okay, that's number one. Number two, we've got a short reverb. This is when a short reverb is needed. Now, this is also for kind of high pitch percussion and things like this. Then I here have a seventh that it did not get loaded with the transition, but I give a seventh heaven generally, and I use this one for kind of like a mid reverb for like short strings and things like this. And here I've got cinematic rooms. This is kind of like the main orchestral reverb. So one thing that I do, by the way, so I've got all these reverbs to separate, high and low and short and long and all that. But then in my orchestral bus, see, I've got this one that goes to Valhalla Room Orchestral Main, which is the next one, which is this one. This one. I use the Bricasti Concert Hall patch and I modified it a little bit, like such. Here's the early, here's the late. And for the cinematic, I use the Dark Cathedral preset, and I modified it a little bit like this. Cool. And then finally, I have another pass of cinematic rooms. This is the legato hall, this preset. I modified a little bit like this, and I use this one as an extra reverb for long stuff. See, cinematic orchestra, cinematic rooms for casual stuff, long, high. And then I've got another one, the cinematic orchestral, cinematic rooms for the long lows. This is the score stage, a little bit of a shorter reverb. And I think I did not modify this preset. This I use very sparingly, very subtle in long low instruments. And I like to separate the reverb character of the high and the lows to add a little bit of clarity. Finally, I've got this one that the old reverb, the IR1 from Waves. It's a convolution reverb that I like specifically for the kind of epic, like big horns sections. I like this one for epic horns kind of thing. It's a relatively mid, like a 2-second reverb with a nice even decay, kind of like a Hall convolution reverb. And finally, I have the super long reverb. When I need a piano with a super long reverb, I use this one. Is the slow attack cathedral preset from Valhalla Room. This is the early and this is the late. and I modified this and I increased the length of the decay at 7.66, which is quite long. It could be more long. Sometimes I bring it up to 20 seconds when I want this kind of effect. All right. So that's that. Those are the reverbs, and you can see here my stems or my groups here, and how much I'm sending to each one of these stems. So for example, for the horns, I send minus 12 to that IR1 reverb, right? The same thing for trumpets. I use the same one at minus 15 in this case, etc. etc. Here are the strings, here are the woods. See, for the woods, I don't have any reverb for the short because of just the quality of the sound of the sample libraries that I'm using. It doesn't need more, etc. Cool. Okay, let's go into let's continue going here into the nitty gritty of all these plugins and all this. I noticed you've changed the piano library. It sounds amazing. This is yes, Oceanics. Yes, yeah, I used to use, and I still use it, but not as my main one. What was the Sound Iron library? I forgot the name. Uh, I forgot the name of the one that I used. But this is Noir, and yes, I like it. It's good. We had, I knew the library, but we had a class. We are in cinematic composing with Nathaniel Bloom. He is the composer for the TV show Flash and Arrow, and in his show he was using this guy, and I'm like, and I tried it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it. It proves to be very useful. More questions. What up? There you go. What's my favorite style of music? I like action high intensity. Takes time to write, but I like that. Um, I like action and aggression, and more into the uh, dark modes and harmonies. Um, and I like music that is a little bit more visceral and things like this. I've got a lot of anger that I gotta take out there. Just kidding. Um, hey Jacob, hello Marc. Just entered the live, and I have a question. Will you do EQ for it? There you go. Let's go there. That's exactly what I'm going to talk about right now. Why do you route with direct routing instead of regular routing? I guess I started configuring it this way, and I kept configuring it like this. So the yeah, if you, like me, had a project where you knew it would be 100% engraved, recorded with a live orchestra, would it dramatically change your workflow or template? Not at all, not at all, because and would you be using Joycore? No, not at all, because the I was Dennis San's studio. Dennis San's mixing engineer for from back like Forrest Gump, Back to the Future, Alice in Wonderland, all the way up to Avengers. So, and he was mixing. Well, I was there. I've been there several times, but the time that clicked to me, he was mixing Alice in Wonderland, and the assistant was doing a ton of work, just lining up everything, and everything was one. They called them just sonic assets. That's how they call it. And so they were aligning. So basically, tempo, the choir recording, all the orchestral takes that was recorded separately, section by section, and then all the samples. So if you were to ask Dennis, so the Avengers theme, right? The Avengers theme or the Marvel, opening music. What is it exactly orchestra and what's exactly samples? And he'd be like, at this point, I don't remember. But it's not just orchestra, definitely. So there are certain things at the orchestra that's way better than samples. And there's just happens to be that there are certain things that samples have a more effective result. And so we as composers use the best tools that we've got to create the best sound possible. So sometimes that's gonna come from an orchestra recording, and sometimes that's gonna come straight from from your mockup. So what you have to what the focus needs to, when you are creating the mockup, it is not just a mockup because then it's gonna be recorded with an orchestra. No, you, in my opinion, you have to try and create the best possible sound. Like, it has to sound as good as possible, because you never know how much of this you're gonna be using to enhance, replace, or help the orchestra if you're recording, even if it's a score intended to be recorded entirely with an orchestra. Maybe the violas at some point, they messed up tuning and you're replacing them with your viola. Or maybe if they messed up tuning, it's gonna be hard to fix that. But maybe the violas section doesn't have kind of like the weight and the aggression that you wanted, and you're gonna blend in a little bit of the viola staccatos that you have from your sequencer, right? I'm not even talking about all the pulses and the synths and the sub bumps and the. I'm not talking about. I'm talking purely orchestra, right? Some maybe you will have a razor kind of like a glissando swell kind of thing that you like your sample better than what the orchestra did. Boom, you're gonna have samples there. So even if you're gonna be recording with an orchestra, I'll put as much time, effort into making sure that the mockup sounds as good as possible. Okay, hi Mark. At least you've changed your piano library. Yes. How do you decide which reverb plugin to use in different instruments? I just have a series of reverbs that I like a lot. It has to be a reverb for cinematic music. Needs to be a reverb with a nice even decay, full decay, just that kind of like cinematic decay, but that does not take too much space and that is almost unnoticeable. And so there are certain reverbs that I like a lot for an orchestral context, and those are the ones that I showed. There are more. I also use Altiverb, but I didn't show it here sometimes, and I'll use the Tadeo or the Fox scoring stage impulse responses. I like East-West spaces as well, and there are other reverbs, but these the ones that I shown, and these are Valhalla rooms, cinematic rooms, and Seventh Heaven. Those are my main reverbs right now. I also use a little bit of the Fab Filter, the Pro R, sometimes for short reverbs, and sometimes I use it for piano. They've got a nice preset for pianos as well. But again, cinematic rooms, Valhalla rooms, and Seventh Heaven. Cool. Let's continue. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Oceanics. Emotional piano. Thank you. Cool. Who's your favorite composer? I'm a fanboy. I'm a John Powell fanboy. So there you go. My favorite so that's for a film composer. My favorite composer, not working right now, is Stravinsky. All right, today I have an hour class of composition. Today's my birthday. Happy birthday! Thank you, Mark. Thank you for being there. Danny, hey, Mark. One thing I have to say, you really take your time for the question, explain it too. Thank you. Well, thank you, guys. Sometimes I feel bad that I deviate too much. Yes, I'm insecure in nature, and so when I get asked the question, sometimes I just continue to go because it's not that I'm trying to like over deliver, even though this is kind of like the concept is that like I hope I answered this correctly or I gave enough information. So there you go. A dynamics controller that's not too expensive than Daniel. I would go with the Korg Nano, something like this. I don't necessarily would endorse that one. It's just the faders, it's a length, it's a little bit short to me. The one that I like, you can get the MIDI maker have. Let me see. The MIDI maker. There you go. There you go. MIDI maker. They have just three faders sometimes in shop. Sparrow 3 all products. This one is under 90. It's not the cheapest, but this one is under $90. But it's also not the most expensive. This is the one that I've got. I think it's the most convenient. It has the faders and the knobs. So that's it. This is the one. So yeah, I guess the knobs make, I don't know, whatever. Let's continue. Boom. Do you add reverb on top of reverb since most of these orchestrals? Yes. Yeah, it's just typical. So if you go like, and I learned this. So back in 2000, so I got so I studied at USC back in 2009-10, got a scholarship, and after that, as an immigrant with a student visa, when you are done studying, they give you what's called the OPT extension, which is 1 year, so you can work to get your next visa, which for a composer is going to be the artist visa. It's called the O1, artist visa. In order for you to be able to get the artist visa, you need credits, basically. You need credits. You have to have worked on movies. And you need credits. And the other things, you need money to pay the lawyers, basically. So I networked as much as possible, and I did get the credits. And to network, I would one of the things that I would do is I would ask people if I could, my plan was like, I just want to be close to people, and I want to be able to show that I can help and show my value, so they give me work. And so I started calling composers, orchestrators, mixing engineers, and I asked them if they would mind me being in the studio, just seeing how they work, and if they needed anything, I could help. But I would not bother them if they didn't need me. And many of them said no, but some said yes. And so I learned a lot. So I got an assisting gig by doing this, and I worked with a composer. But I also sat next to mixing engineers, and I learned a lot just by seeing what they do. And the first time that I learned this, what you just asked, is from Bobby Fernandez. He's mixed Ghostbusters, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3. It's one of these legendary mixing engine score recordists and mixing engineers. And so that's very typical, very typical. You've got your samples, right? And it comes with that room sound already, right? And then on top of that, I saw them, like every mixing engineer, adding a convolution reverb, and then on top of that, an algorithmic reverb, right? So they would add something like altiverb. And even though I'm not talking that to emulate a room around a BSL, like Vienna Symphonic Library dry orchestral sample. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about literally using orchestral tools or Spitfire or Cinestrings, whatever, right? Already wet sample for capture from the Decca tree with a little bit of the spot mic, whatever, right? But the sound. And on top of that, adding a convolution reverb, and on top of that, an algorithmic reverb. Subtle, though. It's not like at 30%, not even at 60%. Sometimes it's just attached at like 12%, 14%, something like this. Mix, right? Or if it's sense mode, maybe it's minus 12, minus 15, something like this, right? So that's that. So two reverbs. That's super typical. Usually, the first reverb goes across all the sections, sometimes across like, okay, this convolution reverb is for all orchestral melodic instruments or for all strings, and then the other reverb specific of sections or subsections. So it's very typical. It's just the way to do it, and it is very simple. Generally, you just you load the plugin, load the preset. You're good to go. The thing that you have to care about is the mix. What about the pre-delay and the it's not what really matters. It's not what really matters. In another music style it would, and at some point there's a moment for that, but generally, like, you're gonna get 98% of what you need by loading the right preset, tweaking a little bit length maybe, and getting the right amount. You're gonna mess, like, if you perfectly dial in the pre-delay, but then you mess up with the amount of reverb. Get the amount of reverb right, and you're gonna be 98% there. That's what I would recommend. All right, cool. Gracias, Marc. Gracias. Un placer. Hombre. Claro que sí. Che. All right, Rite of Spring or Firebird. Firebird. Petrushka. I like Petrushka, Firebird, and then Rite of Spring. But both of them amazing. But those are my favorite. My favorite three. Thanks, Catalin. All right. Do you ever make music for yourself, like an album? Yeah, man, it's been so long. No, it's been, and I should do, and I sometimes I think about it, and I should do something like this, but no, it's been a while. I have the same MIDI than Mark. It's good. I like that. The only problem with this guy is that the lower 2 millimeters or so do not write. So that's the only bug. So I've seen some friends who have like a rubber stick, a rubber thing here, so it doesn't go all the way down. So when they start moving it, it starts recording MIDI data. Because again, the first couple of millimeters do not record MIDI data. Do you use Ozone 1011? Yes, for mastering. If I'm doing mastering later on, yes. But not in my main template, because the entire suite adds too much latency. Credit counts, like TV placements. Credit counts. What do you mean? If I've got credits, yes, you can go in my MDB, and you can see. Credit counts like TV placements. I think so. Yeah, I would say so. Yes. Do you recommend Logic Pro? Logic Pro is fantastic. Both are great. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Cubase, what I would say is like Ableton Live is a completely different thing, right? Or Reaper feels different, but Cubase and Logic is very similar. Thank you. All right, thank you guys. What I would say, if you want to try a sequencer, exactly, just thank you. Cubase has a free 60-day trial. What I would recommend is, like, I use Logic, but I want to try Cubase. Okay, whenever you have a project, then do try that new sequencer, because when you have a project, you have a deadline, and you are forced to do and to make it work. Because otherwise, when you switch from one sequencer to the other, it'll feel like, oh, I am. It doesn't, the thing that I used to do in Logic, now I cannot do it here, or let me think, how can I don't like it. Let me just go back, because there's not a big enough reason for you to keep pushing and to make it work. And if you are like, okay, I committed to this project and I'm going to do it in Cubase, right? And then all the inconsistencies, problems, things that are not built in Cubase yet, because you haven't, you will build them during the project, because you have to deliver the result. So that's when I just, hardcore, just like, if you want to try a new sequencer, do it when you have a project and a deadline. Do you like your new Presonus fader? Yes, I like it very much. But I have to say, I came from the old Behringer, that blue thing, the super noisy one, right? So anything other than that is good. So yeah, no, but this guy is great. Love it. I underuse it so much. Basically, I use it to quickly mute temp and temp dialogue sound effects when I'm composing, right? And sometimes switch music temp. So that's the main use. Do you write HQ and film or documentary in one session or separate sessions? Generally, I group. Sometimes, ultimately, I separate M1, M2, M3 is different projects, but sometimes I group. And I'm like, if I'm on a rush, and I'm like, okay, M7, 8, and 9 are very similar, and they are together, so I'll just compose them in one go. and then I'll export them separately, and I'll save the project later on, or I'll have my assistant save the projects later on, separate the projects. Because then later on, when you are doing the cue sheet and you have to upload the cues to the studio, like not the cues that you send to DAB, I'm talking about the cues that you send to the studio, they need to be separated and they have to match the cue sheet. So yes, ultimately you want to keep things organized. Okay, so I answered all the questions, and I'll have to, as I said, 6:30 is when I take my kids to school. But I usually have someone coming in my way. So let's try and squeeze as much as possible. Good questions. Thanks so much. We'll go back here. Let's go to backend. Okay. Let me real quick explain what I was explaining, and let's talk about DQs. Okay. So backend. Boom. So we talked about, we came here, the most important part is it happens here. Let me real quick explain. So we showed the reverbs. Let me also say that for reverbs, before the reverb, I'll do a little bit of EQ, see? Roll off some of the low frequency, some of the high frequency, that is before the reverb. And then after the reverb, I do a little bit of dynamic EQ, see? This is dynamic EQ, this is not a, Sorry, no. This is a compressor. This is a compressor. It's a multiband compressor that will compress the reverb, right? If there is too much, because generally what happens with reverb is that it will muddy things. At the beginning, you'll add that soft thing, and the reverb will add a beautiful touch. But when you go full orchestra, or the section, or this louder, then the reverb will start responding more, right? And it's gonna be too much, and the combination of all these reverbs will create muddiness. So a little bit of filtering before reverb, and a little bit of dynamic compression in the post reverb. So just for you to know. So that's that for my reverbs. Valhalla's, see, I brought it down minus 6 dBs because Valhalla reverb tends to sound louder than the rest of the reverbs. Okay, cool. My stems, a little bit unorganized, I'm explaining this, but I showed this at the beginning of the video, but basically these are my final stems, and here's where the mastering happens, because the sum of the stems need to sound exactly as the master track. The master happens in each one of the stems, right? So I basically has a little bit for the percussive stems, I have a little bit of multiband compression, then I've got a little bit of shadow hills, which is kind of like a compression that does not just compression, but also it just kind of deepens the sound and makes it sound a little bit wider. And it's a very transparent compression that makes it sound super, super nice. I use the master, this preset, the number 22. That's it, basically, no changes. Mastering medium PGM, no changes. That's a preset that I use. It is an expensive plugin, but if you do the subscription, then it comes a little bit cheaper. Then a little bit of analog saturation, spiff or sooth for melodic, spiff for percussive, adds a little bit of bite, and finally a little bit of fresh air that I should, yeah, there you go, fresh air. So this is a free plugin. Oh no, dang, anyway, I will not save this project. Cool, so that's that. Now, remember, so we've got the tracks that go to the stems, these guys here, or to the groups. All the tracks, so these guys, all the tracks from my template that go to the groups, these guys here. And here's where the mix happens. And then all this gets routed to the final stems where the mastering happens. Okay? So now I explained the reverbs and the final stems. Now let's take the logical path and let's see what treatment do I have in each one of the tracks, and then what mixing plugins do I have in the stems. So okay, so real quick, every track in my template will have a little bit of EQ. The EQ is not, it's essentially, and basically, to get rid of muddiness in the mid-low register, something like from 200 to 400 cycles. That's where you see, I cut a little bit, this guy here is what? 296, and then a little bit of a cut, as you can see, at 22, something like this. Thus, boom. If you copy and paste this across all your channels, that will be an improvement. but can't I just have an EQ at the end of my master batch? It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing to EQ the entire mix than EQing each one of the tracks. Also, ideally, the EQ should be slightly different for each one of the instruments. For example, this one is very specific, right? It has different. So, in generally, most of the times, it's more about cutting than adding. We are carving out the sound. We are cutting. A good EQ, a good mixing engineer will cut more than add. And sometimes we do not need to add stuff on the kind of like, I need this to be a little bit brighter, and that a little bit. Sometimes when you remove some of the low frequencies or mid frequencies that are mudding up the sound, just by removing, carving out some of those frequencies, the high frequencies will shine a little bit more. You will not have to boost those frequencies. Okay. So that's that. So step number one, EQ, right? And generally it's going to be slightly different for each instrument. Step number two, a little bit of analog saturation. So in Cubase, for me, I'm using Magneto 2. Oh, come on. There you go. And it's kind of like this. Let me see. ARP. And then we're gonna go here. There you go. And if we go to channel strips, then we can go, see a little bit of the EQ that we have seen earlier. Oops. Anyway, that's okay. The EQ. Interesting. No, the privacy. Nope, later. Okay, see, new system, new. So anyway, I won't be able to open Magneto, I guess. No, either. Okay, cool. But there you go. Just a tad of tape analog saturation, as you can see here. And so this is the amount of saturation. And yeah, there you go. But it's this Magneto, the way it's configured, I think it's configured in like parallel saturation. So it just saturates 50% of the sound, then mixes the. So it's kind of something like this, and a little bit of EQ. I do this in every track. So this helps two things. First, the EQ, it's by carving out some of the, especially the MIDI frequencies in the low range or mid-low range, and sometimes some of the irritation in the mid-high range. It's going to help avoid frequency stacking. What we were discussing earlier in the chat. It is very different having an orchestra performing in one orchestra. It's a lot of people, but it's one instrument. It's one big instrument. It's different having one orchestra performing in one room at the same time with one set of mics, Decca triage, ringers, etc. It's way different having that than having a bunch of tracks layering one after another, after another, after another, because that essentially is that room with the same set of mics stacked over and over and over and over again. And what happens to that, right? The room response gets stacked. The mic response gets stacked. The floor noise gets stacked. The blah 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 gets stacked over and over again. And all of a sudden we have a build-up, especially in the more problematic areas. This the sub-low end. And then the MIDI area, the irritation area. So we've got at around 200 to 400. We've got all the 40s and below. We've got the 2Ks, the 2000 cycles. So all these problematic areas start stacking, right? And all of a sudden our mockup sounds weird, non-transparent, and we lose clarity. Yes. EQ in every single track is going to help that. Right? So it's tedious, and but it's important. In each one of the tracks, the change is going to be subtle, but when you combine them all together, it's going to be meaningful. So that's the first thing. Second, so that's for EQ. Second, we have what we've mentioned, the analog saturation, right? Analog, so it's like I add Magneto 2, which is a Cubase plugin essentially, to in the channel strip section, to all my tracks. And what this does is it adds a little bit of saturation. What does saturation do? Saturation it glues things together in a way. It blends things together in a very subtle way. The easiest way to explain this is imagine an acoustic guitar and you strum the guitar once and you're gonna hear the six strings, right? Or an electric guitar, a clean electric guitar, you can hear the 6 strings. If you add distortion, right? You strum the same 6 strings, but now it's gonna sound like a block of sound, right? And the same thing with a power chord, right? A power chord with distortion, it sounds like one note. It sounds like one, but if it's clean, you're gonna hear the 3 strings. Cool. All right. So that's the effect of distortion. Saturation is what comes right before distortion. So clean, saturated, and distortion. It happens to be that tape, well, your music used to get recorded on tape, uh, just not that long ago, 30 years ago, right? Um, and tape did something to the sound that made it sound so warm. What it is that a small amount of saturation. Recording to tape, it does not capture the sound as clean as digital. And it also adds a little bit of very subtle distortion, which is called saturation. And tape in particular, it's a very nice type of saturation that's pleasant to the human ear. And so there are plugins that emulate the type of sound. Now, because I'm adding this to every single track, I have to use a plugin that's very efficient when it comes to CPU. So I use the built-in Cubase Magneto 2 that's built in each one, and boom, I activate to this. So EQ in all the tracks, EQ in and saturation in all the tracks. That is for the tracks. Then when we go to the stems, we've got the plugins that I'll try to explain as quick as possible, and I can hear the kids coming my way. So I've got literally seconds. I've explained the reverbs. I explained the basses. The final stems. Now I'm gonna explain the groups, and we'll finish it here. But the most important thing about the groups is the sense to the reverbs. That's the one thing, and then also a few things that I added here. I'm gonna just stop and explain the most important one for me. So basically, you're gonna add a little bit of compression for some instruments, right? So for percussive instruments and things like this, I like to use multiband compressor. Sorry, now I messed up. Earlier. Sorry, when I showed this. This is a dynamic EQ after the reverb. Sorry, going back to. Before the reverb, I've got a little bit of a filter, and then after I've got a compression. No, it's not a compression. It's like dynamic EQ. I just it's been 2 hours and I messed up. I made a mistake. This is a dynamic EQ, which in a way acts a little bit as a compressor. Sorry. End of parentheses. And now let's go back to here to the groups, to the stems. See, there's a lot going on here. The most important thing is sense to reverb. That's the most important thing. The second most important thing, in my opinion, is multiband compressor to percussive groups like this. Right? I'll add as clean as possible multiband compressor that compresses just like up to like 3 dBs or something like this. Or is it minus 3 dBs? See? So what this means is that if I've got something that's very hot here, boom, it hits whatever frequency range and it'll compress up to 3 dBs max, because I want to keep this as transparent as possible. But this will control the mix a little bit. So compress multiband, or as transparent as possible, multiband compressors for percussive groups. And sometimes a little bit of extra tape saturation. I use this one for like high pitch percussion, like top of the mix percussion, high percussion, like cymbal rolls, things like this. I use it for things like this. And then I like low ender for sub bumps and things like this. This is the configuration. This makes it sound so low. Let me show it to you. This is going to be a lot of fun. And then finally, I'll talk about black box in a second for strings. But let's go here. Sub bum. This guy. Yeah. So this is low. And now if we go F5, we go low ender like here. So without, it's low. But now low ender. And this I can hear with my headphones. With a subwoofer, it just it's low. It's low. It's way lower. So very subtle, very subtle. Still, see, like if I see the mix direct bass. If I bring all the way to the bass, it is this weird thing because the limiter is the guy. So direct. Yeah boy. Yeah boy. Yeah boy. And I do have to go. The last thing that I'm going to show is this guy, which is black box for the strings. Black box. So this is just beautiful. It's subtle, but it's beautiful. This is my last edition, and I picked this from Dennis San's class that he did, and especially with those libraries, those strings libraries that sound a little bit darker, like Cinematic Studio Strings and things like this. Not as much. I don't when I use Cine Strings, which sounds a little bit brighter, because Cine Strings. Sometimes there's comments about there are people that like and people that hate Cine Strings. I think it's a beautiful library. It has some problems here and there, tuning, etc., especially with some of the short notes. But it's a beautiful library. And the magic about it, let me just defend it for just for a sec. What I believe the magic of the library is, I wish it was a little bit more consistent, but the beauty about that library is that it got recorded first in the Sony scoring stage, which is a room that sounds beautiful, but also using as the main Decatur mics the vintage M50s, the vintage Neumann M50s, the capsule of those mics over the years, and those mics sound brighter out of the box. Those are mics designed to be placed far away from the source while still keeping the high frequency content. So it's a mic that's designed to record orchestral music, orchestral sound, orchestral music, and orchestra from the Decatur. Great. On top of that, the vintage mic. So there's a remake of these mics which are called the M150s, right? But if you are lucky to own one of the vintage M50s, the degradation of the capsule makes it a little bit thinner, and so it enhances the high frequency even a little bit more. Kind of like ribbon mics to brass. That's kind of a similar effect to strings, which makes the string sound beautiful. Sometimes, though, can even sound a little bit harsher with samples when stacked with other libraries. But you have to understand, if you know how to use, see, like it's like if you understand, it's more important to know your library than to have the newest library that can do X, Y, Z, right? So if you know all this and you put it in context and you treat it correctly, right? Sometimes in a comparison, it may sound a little bit too bright and too harsh in comparison to other libraries. But if you know how to use it, right, and you can get the most out of, the essence of the library. So in that case, for that library, I do not run it through this guy because it would brighten it a little bit more. But for the rest of libraries, I do. And it just adds that thing that sometimes the samples are missing, which is that kind of like clarity, brightness, and definition. All right. Especially for kind of like more modern orchestral cinematic music. So that's that this guy does a trick in such a beautiful way. And I'm gonna show it to you, and then I'm gone. So blah, blah, blah. Strings. Let's go with strings. Strings. Cinematic Studio Strings. Long. Alright, cool. And hopefully this. And then I have to go. Okay, this guy. Okay, so I'm gonna be bypassing this. So it's very subtle. It's very subtle, but it's there for sure. You can hear in the Haitian, and I just brought it down, and I brought up the maximizer and the volume to hear kind of like the noise, the floor noise. So but when we've got more body and character, I just thought this it's very subtle, but it just brightens the sound in a very subtle way. This is kind of like a tube's um, air or brightness. Okay, this guy is gold. I like it very much. And especially when activated in the strings in context, when you've got this in each one of like the strings high, strings low, and you activate them all of a sudden it's like, oh. So section by section is very subtle, but when you combine all of them, it's like it kind of blooms all of a sudden. So there you go. I have to go. It has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate you guys so much. Where's my chat? Where's the chat? I lost the chat. Where's here? Have a fantastic day. Have a fantastic rest of the week. If you've got more questions, please post them down below. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. It would you be making me a huge favor, or I'd be very, very happy. And other than that, is the second time that I've got that I have to go. Basically, I have to go. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.